Welcome back. Time for our GMC Sierra Tweet of the Night. Comes from the Steelers 12 years ago today. The Gotham Rogues made their debut in The Dark Knight Rises. I had to think back to where I was 12 years ago. Chris, I was working my first job on air and TV out in Fayetteville, Arkansas, when this movie debuted. And there was a bunch of us that worked at the station, and we said, we're going to go to the midnight showing. This is when midnight showings were still a thing. Bunch of us from the TV station. Some of us had just gotten off work. We get to the movie theater at midnight to watch this movie. And Chris, all I did literally every 8 minutes was like, hey, that's Pittsburgh. Hey, that's Pittsburgh. Hey, that's Pittsburgh. And my friends were like, will you shut up talking about Pittsburgh? I'm like, I can't help it. That movie was filmed in my hometown.
Anytime there's a movie from Pittsburgh, I do that too. What is it?
Exactly.
She's Out of My League. You watch that, of course. Striking Distance. The Perks of Being a Wallflower. All those movies. You see, I did that. I've been there. You know, all that stuff.
Jack Reacher, I want to say, came out that same year, and I did the exact same thing.
Yes. That opened right across, or the opening scene was right across from PNC Park, right?
Exactly. See, you get it. You totally get it. 412-575-2600 is the number. We are getting a lot of people on the phone lines wanting to talk about the Pirates. We start with Jerry in Franklin. Jerry, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hey, Josh and Chris. Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Appreciate
a couple points I'd like to make if I could. You always talk about pitching, and I remember from all the years of watching baseball, you know, if you had 2-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio, that was great. And the Pirates as a team have about 2.5-to-1 now, which is amazing. Second thing is, boy, up the middle in the infield with O'Neal Cruz and with Nick Gonzalez, it is so cool to see two middle infielders driving in meaningful runs. I love that. I can't remember the last time we've had two guys that were run producers in the middle of the infield. So thanks a lot, guys.
Love this call. I love the point about the pitching. And a lot of it, you can't even put it just towards the starters or the relievers. We talked about Aroldis Chapman and what he's been doing. Colin Holderman continues to be one of the best relievers in baseball. I think you could have made a case for him going to the All-Star game, but, you know, that Skeens guy got to go, so obviously it made a case. And Brian Reynolds has been tremendous, so him going obviously made sense too. I could have easily made a case for Colin Holderman, but he speaks to a good point. This is a Pirate pitching staff that isn't just getting through innings and just getting ground ball outs or getting lucky. They're striking guys out. They're cutting down on walks. How many times have we seen, Chris, walks pile up with this pitching staff or guys that just couldn't punch batters out? We're seeing that right now with this staff.
A couple of points to build off what Jerry said there. That not just the closers. We always talk about Chapman being maybe a borderline Hall of Fame type closer, and Bednar, of course, the closer now. But these young guys in kind of those middle that have great stuff in those setup roles, the Majinski, the Kyle Nicholas, especially those two in particular, they're being guys that are really you feel really good about them going into the game, and you're 6th or 7th or whatever innings they're doing, and to be young guys that coming up like that. And Nick Gonzalez has really been one of the kind of like slept on best stories from the Pirates this year. I think I was at least personally worried maybe he wasn't going to be. He was a top 10 pick for sure, maybe even a top 5 pick in the draft. And he didn't really have any power last year. It looked like he was thought to be this great college hitter, and it looked like maybe he was sort of sputtering out. Mm-hmm. For him to kind of break out this year, it blunts what's happened to Henry Davis. But if you get one of your top 5 picks playing up to a level of a high quality starting caliber player, that's a big help to the offense, especially what they're getting at second base there that first month or two of the season.
And when he first got called up, he was hitting the ball pretty well immediately out of the gate. And I'm going to borrow a Clint Hurdle, idiom here. He always talked about how players would come up and punch within the league counter punches. Well, then credit Nick Gonzalez, because when the league counterpunched, he started punching back, counterpunching himself. He's found a way, even after he hit a slump after that immediate first spurt that he was on, ran into a slump. Now he's counterpunching again and finding his way back to getting meaningful hits in meaningful games for this team. Richard in Penn Hills, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hi, Josh, Chris. I wanted to talk about the possible acquisitions of two from the Oakland Athletics, Rooker and Bidet. We have an abundance of pitching in the minors, and I think it would be a wonderful time to set us up for the future years there with those two players. I think they could immediately help.
Richard, thank you for the call. I seriously think you were hanging out with our producer, Jeremiah Miller, or you bugged his office, because we had this discussion mere hours ago, Chris, about how Rooker could be an attractive piece for this team. Not only does he help them out immediately, but he comes with a couple years of club control. So you can actually have him not just this year, but into the future, where you're actually, not just having a rental guy. He's a guy who becomes a piece for maybe a little bit more of a longer term. I like the thought of that, especially if you can get your hands on a guy like Rooker to help this team right now.
Yeah, and Rooker, I mean, he's playing in Oakland, which is a kind of a black hole right now for notoriety, but I mean, he's up in the league leaders in slugging and home runs. I mean, he's one of the best this season, at least. I don't know how sustainable it is. He's a real late bloomer. Was he 29 years old? No,
something like that,
second or third season. But he's one of the best power hitters in baseball this season. And yeah, you have it. So, and he's essentially on a minimum salary right now. Now that'll go up next year, and you have at least 2 years of control after this. Those are the two drawbacks, especially with the Pirates, why they might not acquire somebody. Now the cost is probably high considering all those things that I just mentioned. But yeah, the caller was exactly right about all this pitching sort of depth you've built up in the minor leagues, and there's really still a dearth of kind of position player prospects you can bring up. One way you can remedy that is by parlaying those assets you have of all those extra arms into a bat. And we could sit here and talk about him or whoever it might be, but yeah, this wouldn't be a one-year rental, a type of player like that. So a lot of the pieces fit together. It's just a matter of what the prospect cost would be, what the A's would want, what the Pirates would be willing to give up for it to happen.
Chris, I can think of a team who did that quite a bit. 20, 30 years ago, they built an organization doing that. Atlanta did that. They invested heavily in pitching. And the guys that were the excess, the ones that, they couldn't hang on to or maybe, couldn't serve a purpose for them, they would use them and dangle them as trade bait and get bats back. So it's a great asset to have if you have minor league pitching depth to be able to acquire some bats. Maybe if you have some major league pitching depth to acquire some bats that you might need. I think that's a really great idea. Joe in New Kensington, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hey, what's up, Josh? How you doing?
Good, appreciate you.
Hey, I was thinking.
Sorry, Joe, we lost you. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll try to answer another call or two. Maybe we'll get in the training camp. Maybe we'll talk more Pirates. We'll find out. Stick around. Before we go, Chris Adamski's here from the Trib. Chris, a couple tweets that kind of underscore what we've talked about already with the Pirates pitching. James says Luis Ortiz as a number 4 starter and Bailey Falter as a 5. He thinks you may have a good rotation there. Possible trade trip maybe from the excess, like one of the callers mentioned earlier. Also, Ryan says Derek Shelton now looks like a genius for holding off Keller and Skeens until the Cardinals series. He might be on to something here because it does. That decision looks a lot better now in hindsight.
Yes, I share a lot of the consternation about the weekend against the Major League best team when you keep your 2 best starters who were theoretically rested out of the series. But hey, you got a division series coming up, and you've already won this series now against the Phillies. We'll see what I'll get too selfish and go for a sweep tomorrow. But Josh, are we going to go the entire show? This is crazy because I was just saying this last Sunday on the Showdown. It might have been the first Showdown in the 25 years they were doing it that there was Pirates beginning to end, right? I mean, how many times in 25 years the Pirates been the number 1 story no matter what, with no Steelers whatsoever and no Penguins or no Pitt or whatever it might be? And we might just done the show now and the Saturday before training camp starts, as you said.
Now I got to zag when you just zigged. So now I have to be able to jump. No, I actually had planned on talking about this anyway, but I wanted to drop this question to you. And with the backdrop of going into Steelers training camp, in a couple days, players report. Now, Chris, you and I both know this. You've been on the beat a long time. We've been working together for 10 years. You and I both know that the Steelers do not negotiate in season. Once they hit their deadline, they don't negotiate contracts. They move on, they play the season, and they settle the rest after the season's over. There are a couple guys who could be having discussions about contracts. Najee Harris comes to mind. There's the possibility of maybe even a Pat Freiermuth discussion. But Cam Hayward wants a new deal, and he wants to be paid at a certain level for the guys at his position. My question to you, Chris Adamski, do we leave Steelers training camp in Latrobe with Cam Hayward signed to a contract extension? Do you think that happens?
I've gone back and forth on it. I feel like there's a lot more optimism that it'll get done now. I just feel like both sides I don't say need each other, but want each other and want this marriage to continue. It is kind of crazy that whether it's Cam's PR campaign or however you want to put it, that when the season ended, I would have thought the debate would be, is Cam Hayward going to be back? Will he take a pay cut? Will he have to? Will they let him come back for the salary they're paying him? And not only doing that, now he wants an extension and a raise, and that's become the narrative. Which, hey, more power to him. And he's been one of the great Steelers of all time. So in light of that. And I know there's examples, Troy Polamalu, however you want to say it, the Steelers have kind of pushed players out the door, big-name players. But I think he'll get the benefit of the doubt in terms of last year being an injury-marred year, in terms of his production, in terms of what he's meant to the team and what he's, still kind of means the team as the face of it and everything. And how he's never going to embarrass the organization. I think the Steelers want to keep him around. I think he does. I think he understands the value of not finishing his career for a year or two in a Seattle uniform or whatever it might be. It just wouldn't look right. So I think you add those two things together, they'll find a way to somehow creatively give Cam a little more money while kind of lowering the cap hit. There's ways you can get around this, and both sides kind of get a little bit of what they want at least.
That's what I anticipate. I anticipate if they are going to try to find a way to make an extension happen, they'll do it for a couple of reasons. One, to at least try to keep Cam under contract for the next couple of years, so maybe he retires in black and gold. The other thing, some salary cap relief, maybe this year coming up. Who knows? Maybe they stretch some things out over time. I had this discussion with Jason Mackey not too long ago. I keep coming back to the thought of there might be a avoidable year or two in there to make this work, Chris. I figure there's going to be some way to make it work, but there's anybody I can trust to work around the machinations and make a contract work. It's Omar Khan, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what they'll figure out a way. There's always a way you can do something. It's the cap's real, but there's a way you can manipulate it. In a situation like this, where Cam Hayward has a big cap hit this year, you can kind of lower that. Although I don't know what they're going to spending on at this point. Whenever we're already about approaching August, but there is a little couple of receivers out there you can maybe spend it on. So maybe that'll happen.
Fair enough, Chris. Always appreciate the time. Thank you for joining us as well. For Chris Adamski, for our producer Jeremiah Miller, and our team here at KDKA, I'm Josh Taylor saying thanks for watching. We're here for you every night on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. We'll see you around.